All right. Well, hi, Solve community. My name is Jessica Hubley. I'm a 2017 Solver as CEO of an organization called AnnieCannons, and I'm here today with Harry Moseley, the Global Chief Information Officer at Zoom Communications. So I want to give Harry the chance to introduce himself and his remarkable background, and we'd love to have a conversation about the future of work today. So take it away, Harry.
Great, Jessica. Nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So Harry Moseley, I'm the global CIO for Zoom Video Communications. Joined the company 2.5 years ago, and prior roles, I was the CIO for KPMG US. I was the CIO for the Blackstone Group. I was the co-CIO and head of investment banking technology at Credit Suisse. And I was the chief technology officer for UBS, the Americas, and did a fintech startup shortly after I graduated college. So I think how apropos that I'm addressing this wonderful group today. So yes.
Brilliant, thank you. And just so the audience has a little bit of background about AnnieCannons, we are a nonprofit organization. We train survivors of human trafficking and gender-based violence to be software programmers and entrepreneurs. So our program has three parts, briefly. A training program for survivors that assumes no prior education, which currently takes place 100% over Zoom. An agency program where we source and manage work for our beneficiaries so that they can build their economic power. And that work also takes place 100% on Zoom, and in fact was enabled to transition pretty seamlessly to remote work because we had a Zoom license donated a couple of years ago. So we had already been using Zoom to operate the agency with a distributed workforce. We were able to very, very quickly accelerate that once the pandemic hit. And the final piece I mentioned is an incubator program where we help survivors build out their ideas for anti-abuse, anti-exploitation, and other human rights technologies that help target some of the problems that led to their exploitation. So I'm grateful to be back here with Solve. It's been an amazing journey as a solver. And I wanted to kick off with just an anecdote for Harry. I will tell you that in our classroom, we have two TAs who have young kids that just started first grade virtually over Zoom. And our entire class, our current cohort of survivors who are learning JavaScript right now, set up their virtual backgrounds to be the two kids' favorite princess and superhero. So we had a pretty delightful one. And I will say we have had some fun company meetings for people's birthdays and things like that, where there was a virtual background competition. I learned that you can have moving virtual backgrounds in Zoom, so it's been really incredible. And I think what we've seen at AnnieCannons is actually a number of surprises about the pandemic. We've been really pleased to see that actually our virtual class is seeing the highest attendance rates, the highest out-of-class participation rates of any class that we've had in the past. And Harry, I would love to just hear from you. What are some changes that you guys have seen in the ecosystem, and sort of what steps do you see being taken down the path toward remote work?
Yeah. So. Well, clearly, sort of 8 months ago, the work changed forever, starting sort of like early February. Things started to change. And then as we got into March, things very quickly changed. And as we went through March, it was kind of like, what happened, right? It's kind of like everybody was working in corporate offices, and then suddenly everybody's working from somewhere else. And we've seen a lot of change sort of over the 6 months as well, during that time, where people have changed, as you were saying earlier, people have changed locations. They've moved from, the Bay Area to, Denver. They've moved to, hang out with their families, etc. So there's been a lot of change. I fundamentally believe that, sort of the life that we had before Corona, I think that's changed forever. And that, many people, sort of have understand that there's a new way of work. And some people have even said that COVID-19 or coronavirus, has actually accelerated what was actually inevitable. And so, a couple of comments on that. One is, sort of the notion that people can work from anywhere. People were against that. They didn't think it would work very well. They didn't think it would be very effective. People getting educated on a remote basis didn't think it would work very well. Well, that's been proven completely wrong. Not for every role, not for everybody. everybody, not for all geographies, but for many millions of people, it actually works very effectively. Um, a friend of mine, his daughter suffers from Down syndrome. And so they would bring their daughter to a center every day, but the center shut down early in March because of COVID-19. And they went virtual on Zoom. And he said, it's been a godsend, Harry. It's been a godsend. Why? Because for me and my wife, taking our daughter to the center every day was a battle. She didn't want to go. Getting her in the car was a challenge. Getting her out of the car, getting her into the classroom was very, very difficult. And when we went virtual, she's at home. She's in her own environment. She is so happy when she wakes up in the morning about not having to go to the classroom, about being able to join and see her friends over video from the comfort of her own home. It's taken all the stress out of her life. It's taken the stress out of my life. It's taken the stress out of my wife's life. It has dramatically changed us. And I think that's been a really interesting story because it's, there are elements of, quote, silver lining in all of this horrible experience that the world has gone through.
That's absolutely true. And that lines up perfectly with our experience. We had, we always had live classes. We found a lot of benefit in bringing people together live because a lot of the folks that we support really had nobody look them in the eye and care about them before. They still do that now with Zoom, but something that we were surprised to find is that, covering transportation expense doesn't exactly offset the cost of the commute, the cost of dropping the kids off at school. So I think that's a lot of the reason why we've seen our, our attendance rates go up. I think one interesting sort of corollary to that is I see a lot more kids crawling on mom's shoulders during work meetings, and for us that's not a problem at all because we had sort of a culture where most people are moms, so it's expected that people had kids. Our office was kid friendly as well, so that's quite unusual. But I've noticed in my conversations with others whose kids appear in the frame a little bit of apprehension, and I wonder, you guys are supporting so many educational institutions as well as so many corporations that are employing parents who are trying to take care of kids at home. And I wonder if you have any suggestions for the overtaxed parent trying to run two Zooms at once. Feels like
so welcome to the next normal. I mean, there was a great article in a newspaper here in New York some months back. And it's, the headline read, "Social distancing, you must be joking." Never did I think I'd know so much about the people I work with ever before. I know, I've met their parents, I've met their grandparents, I've met their kids, I've met their pets, I've met their dogs, their cats, I've seen snakes. I've been in their kitchens, their living rooms, their dining rooms, even some bedrooms and an occasional bathroom. And it's, it's like, and what's wrong with all that? It's like, it just brings us closer together, and it takes the friction out of connecting with people. It's, seeing that, cat's tail go across the screen. I mean, no one even comments. I was on a board meeting and the CEO is making a board presentation. His wife comes into his office and goes, "I need you to hold the baby." He goes, "Sweetheart, it's like, I'm in the middle of making an executive presentation to the board." And she goes, "Okay, that's an answer to a different question here." And now he's holding the baby and he continues his presentation. So a couple of suggestions. One of the ones I love the most was young family, small apartment, 2 kids, 4 and 6 years old, both parents working from home, both kids are on Zoom being educated. But the kids didn't understand, why mommy and daddy are home. They didn't understand the notion that, the babysitter is not coming and they're not going to school and all this. So they had real difficulty until they did the following. They put duct tape on the floor. And they explained to their kids that when mommy and daddy are on this side of the duct tape, we're actually at work. We can't be disturbed. When we're on this side of the duct tape, we're actually at home. And that worked perfectly for them. But it is really hard. It's very hard. Being a parent, it's hard. Being a parent is hard. No two ways about it. Doesn't matter who you are. I think being a parent is really hard. But being a parent in this environment where you're working at home, being a caregiver, and now you're being asked to be an educator too, is particularly challenging. I do think that, you know, sort of in this next normal that we're getting into, hopefully the kids can go back to school, because I think that's really important for them and their upbringing and their social capabilities, etc. I think it's really important that they can do that. But I do expect that, you know, sort of the parents will continue to work from home or work from anywhere, as we say, primarily because they have been proven to be very productive working from home. It's very effective. They're making fantastic contributions. They're happier. You know, the notion of seeing, you know, your kids off on the, you know, off to school in the morning and being there when they get home in the afternoon, give them a cookie, give them a glass of milk, settle them down so they can get their homework done. I mean, you think about the quality, the order of magnitude improvement to your quality of life. I think it's really going to be changed forever. And also, employers can, you know, can hire people geographically agnostic to where their corporate offices were. I mean, you know, you're in Berkeley, you could be in Vermont, you could be in Paris, you could be in Bangalore, you could be in Sydney. You look the same, you sound the same. It's like, and we can still have that same interaction. And I think that's pretty cool.
I agree. I think that's been truly incredible. I know we have folks that you know, can't quite afford to make a nonprofit salary unless they're living in a really affordable place, and it's really expanded our hiring pool in particular.
That's great.
There's one thing I did want to ask you, because I think the one sort of looming question for us has been, you know, how virtual do we go with our classes? Because we have always interviewed live, we have always started the class live. Our current class started live and was together for a few weeks in person before going to Zoom. And the question has come up all over the place of, should we just teach on Zoom and expand the breadth of the class? And, you know, normally AnnieCannons provides work opportunities, but eliminating that piece and just providing the training, and that way it's available to people, as you say, all over the world, survivors who don't have to relocate or deal with visa obligations or anything like that. But we realized very quickly that the survivors who aren't in possession of a computer, an internet connection, a fast one at that for video chat, we'd still be excluding those. In other words, whether it's kids or, you know, adult survivors in another country, often the most vulnerable people are the ones that lack internet connectivity and lack those devices. And I wonder if you would say something, I think, to the business community generally about how we can better support actually, you know, building the accessibility of tools like Zoom to be able to participate in the new digital workforce, which I agree is likely the future and a permanent reality that we'll be living with for decades.
Yeah, it's there are populations of people that unfortunately still don't have access and don't have the means to have access. But I do believe, Jessica, that we're seeing a lot of change in that space. I remember I was visiting India with my family almost 3 years ago now, and a friend of mine took me for a drive up into the mountains in southern India. And he said, I'm going to drive through a couple of villages and I just want your observations. So we're driving through these villages and I said to him, it's really interesting. There's no electricity. There doesn't seem to be proper hygiene from a water perspective and, you know, human waste. But they're laying fiber. Why are they laying fiber? And he goes, excellent observation. He says, we're laying fiber to these villages so that we can bring them internet service, because they do have smartphones. And they're powering the smartphones using solar panels. And we believe that by smartphones and bringing them access to the internet, they can get what you're doing, education. And if we can educate these people, then they can bring commerce. If we can educate them and they bring commerce, then we can bring in power and we can bring in water treatment and running water. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and I think, you know, sort of beyond that, I'm I'm at a loss as to, sort of, I don't have any. I wish I could say here, Jessica, here's how we can solve that, but it's really hard. I do think, what you're doing is wonderful, and I think, the expanding your reach globally, where you can, I think that's a terrific opportunity. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, you can't get I can see what your vision is. It's kind of like, everywhere. You can't get everywhere, but you can get certainly um, certainly a greater coverage area than what you had before. And so,
Yeah.
and just keep working at it. I mean, right?
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, I think there is absolutely an opportunity to help more people, and we just want to keep looking at ways that we can reach the most marginalized. And I think, actually, I think it's a really interesting insight to look at the introduction of connectivity as a pathway to building, sort of economic activity and economic growth in an impoverished community, as a maybe a reverse order way to get at what we've all been working toward all the time. But take heart, Harry. I never expected Zoom to solve global poverty during this panel. So I think that's one that we'll all still, and hopefully lots of other solver teams will still be working on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I am hearing that we are running short on our session, but I just want to thank you for the opportunity to hear from you. And I'm delighted to have been here with you today. And thanks to MIT Solve for having us.
Thank you, and a pleasure to meet you and have this time to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.